Sweet surrender as I love, serve, and remember.
The star of our heart. There's something magical about stars. I was listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson. Has anyone listened to him before? Most of you, yeah, a lot of you. I start listening to one thing and I just go off. He's so interesting about so many different things. I get lost in his videos. He has a video called Star Talk. And so he can obviously, he's an astrophysicist, so he can obviously go into a lot of detail, which I cannot go into, about what stars are: gaseous, fusion, electromagnet fusion, clouds. But there is something that really captured me, and I've heard it before. Brian Swim was the first person, who's a cosmologist, is the first person I heard this. He was saying that stars are, he thinks they're living, they're reproducible. And he says they have a metabolism and they're reproducible. So they have a beginning and an end. And he said something I never thought of. Stars are even being born right now. Stars are always being born. And when they die, they burst into stardust. And creation is made from light, and that each and every one of us, as he was saying, and I've heard others say, we are literally made of stardust. That is what created us. And that makes me think of Cher's favorite Ernest Holmes quote. I was asking our Lighthouse prayer team some of their favorite quotes from Ernest Holmes, and Cher, this is interesting. Cher shared Ernest Holmes' quote that the highest God and the innermost God is the one God. The highest God and the innermost God is the one God. And I believe that is why we feel this visceral understanding of stars. It's this transcendent, they're in a whole different time dimension, spatial, the whole time thing is crazy. But there's something that we feel that's magical and visceral. We feel it in our soul because we are made of it. So we can have, as I listen to the science of it, it's totally fascinating. I really love it. And there's something beyond just understanding something intellectually. It's the magic of it. And that brings us to this wonderful season, and for a lot of December is associated with the Christian religion, because they celebrate every year Christmas. There's also Hanukkah, and Diwali sometimes lands in this, Ramadan sometimes lands. But Christmas, as we know, it's a part of our culture here in the United States. And there's this story of the three kings, or the three magi. Now, interestingly, it was only in one of the Gospels, Gospel of Matthew. It's not in any of the other Gospels. And so that's interesting in that it's still become this story that captures our imagination. And it's only like 2 verses, but it's captured us because there's something about this star, and it's the star of the East. Now, the Magi were Persian prophets and astronomers. So they would make prophecies and understand the world based on stars. So magical and mystical. In fact, when I was looking up Magi, they were saying they were mystical prophets. So the mystical and the magical are intertwined, and it's all connected with stars. And then we feel it with the season and the darkness of the season. Not lately, because it's been so cloudy and it was a full moon today, but when the clouds clear and the moon is a little bit dimmer, the stars come out. We can feel the magic. So with stars, we've heard of the North Star and the Star of the East. The Star of the East, they say, is what the three magi followed, but then following that, I had so much fun this week, listening to all the different things about what is the Star of the East. There's no other description of it. They're like, well, it could be Kepler's 3, blah, 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 whatever that is, supernova, but there's nothing reported at that time, anywhere. So what is this star, and what did they even mean? Were they already in the East? I mean, a lot of different things, a lot of different synopses, but none of them really hold up. So we're going to get back to the Star of the East later. But we've heard of the North Star. You all heard of the North Star? The North Star is a scientific, repeatable, objective fact of this Earth plane. The North Star is the Polaris star, and it's just north of the equator, and it doesn't move. So it is a guiding tool for anyone who needs navigation. You can look up at night, find the Polaris star, and you can gauge your movements, your navigation, could be your compass, by this North Star. And so, of course, we've started looking at people's North Star. What is it that never moves or changes? So often, as we're coming to the end of the year and getting ready for 2025, we're focusing on, what do I need to release? What from my past no longer serves me? And then we ask the question, what do I need to expand into? What are my areas of growth? But the most important question is, what is my North Star? What is it that never changes? It doesn't matter what year it is on the calendar. It doesn't matter what's happened or hasn't happened in my life. What is it that is never changing for me? And how intimate do I feel with that? How intimately? It's not way out there. The highest God is our innermost God. It's something we feel deep in our soul. So the question to be asking ourselves, along with release and expansion, but to me those are secondary questions. The first question we have to answer is, what is my North Star? And I happen to just, nothing ever happens, but by accident. So I saw this video with Elizabeth Gilbert. I don't know what the context was. I only saw part of it, just showed up. But it was great. She was talking about how she's always loved to write. And she's written her whole life, and then she would write for magazines, but she could never get her books published, constantly getting letters of rejection. She kept writing letters of rejection. Finally, it hit. Eat, Pray, Love. How many of you have heard of Eat, Pray, Love? Most of you, yes. It was a great book. Big success. Finally got published, huge success. Not everybody, a lot more people know who Elizabeth Gilbert is now. And she said, after that book was published, so many people came up and asked me, how are you going to beat that one? How are you going to follow up with that? They made a movie with it, with Julia Roberts. It was a huge success, popular success. And that was a question for herself, too. So eventually she came out with her second book, and she said, it bombed. And it was the greatest thing, she said, that happened because it set her free. There was no longer writing for an outcome. That what she discovered is she just loves to write. That is her joy. And whether nobody reads it, everybody reads it, it's famous, it bombs, it never takes away from her North Star. Writing is her North Star. It's been the thread from her life from she was little, and it will carry her to the end of her life in this body. It's that place that brings her alive, that fills her soul, that is this creative, wonderful way to find her voice, to communicate, to love, to care for others, giving her gifts. And she continues to bless so many people, thousands, tens of thousands of people through her writing. Even though she may have moved away from the popular eye, there's still tens of thousands of people who follow her. But that the number isn't what matters. It's the fact that she found her North Star. So the question we're asking ourselves is, what is your North Star? What is that thing that breathes you? And it could be a person. So we heard Ken Wilber with Treya Wilber. She's his North Star. She's the star of his heart. It's intimate. It's like you can't imagine breathing without this. You can't imagine being on this planet without this. It is not just like some mild interest. I think of Jack with music. I can't even imagine who he would be without music. We all have it, every one of us. And it has nothing to do with outcome. It has nothing to do with other people are watching you, success, whether you make money at it, but you know that you know that you know, this is my North Star, and I can't live without my North Star. So I invite you this week to be with that. What is my North Star? What is it that I can cultivate? And it can be more than one thing. It doesn't have to be just, it could be a person, people, a person or people. It could be multiple things. If it's, I think of like music, many different forms of music, anything. A lot of times artists like to play music and they like to paint pictures. You might like to do math, and you might like to read Sanskrit. I had a professor who did, that's why he loved poetry, he loved physics, and he loved Sanskrit. You know, it doesn't matter. You know it, and you know that it becomes, and you know it because it's part of your everyday life. It's not something you do once in a while. It's not something you do only when it's convenient or when you have time for it. When you are struggling to even find time for things, that's something you should be doing. Your North Star is something you have to do, and you have to do it every day. You can't help it. And if you don't do it, you feel out of sorts. You feel out of alignment. And the moment you return to it, you're like, oh, I can breathe again. And it is. It's like that. You feel like you can breathe again. What is your North Star? Now, this North Star sometimes it's totally clear, but sometimes it takes darkness for it to become visible. So some of you may be going through challenging times this December. Holidays can bring up a lot of difficult emotions and feelings, family, grieving people that aren't with you this year that were with you last year, or even people who have passed on many years prior. When we're in the darkness, sometimes it's easier to see what that North Star is because all these other things start going away. And when everything's gone away, what is it? What is that one little pinprick of light that's within us? Out there or in here, it's one and the same. That keeps me going. Put your attention there. Don't think it's in irrelevancy. Well, look, I have all this darkness, all this grief, all this depression, anxiety, fear, all this, whatever we call dark emotions. There's so much, and there's only this little bit of light. Or I only remember feeling this light, but it was so long ago. It feels like a really distant light. But it's real. That light is the most real thing about us, and it doesn't matter how small it is. I think of Jesus' comment in the Gospels, the faith the size of a mustard seed can move mountains. That one little pinprick of light, no matter how far away it is, or even if it's inside of you, but it feels distant inside of you or not very big, putting our attention on that, nurturing it, getting to know it, being intimate, it can move the mountains of darkness. We are not doing it. We don't have to fight everything. We just need to put our attention on the light. That North Star, that's our navigation of who and what we are, why we came to be here on this planet. Hold to that, nurture it, love it about yourself. So much of why we want, I always think, I hear so much about people as they get older. It started to be 60s, I don't have to care what people think, and then it became 50s, and then 40s. And I'm like, we really want to get to a place where we don't care what people think. And I was contemplating that, and I don't think it's that. I think once, as we get older, we get to know ourselves more, and we realize, oh, I've been with myself for 4 decades, 5 decades, 6 decades, 7 decades, 8 decades, 9 decades, 10 decades, and I'm the only one who's been with me 24/7. And if I'm not listening to myself, if I'm not more focused on hearing that light within me and nurturing that, no one else is going to do that. People come and go, but I have to nurture that light within me. And when we do that, we start to become free of all the stuff out there. We still engage with it, but we become free from it because we've gotten so in tune with this presence, this North Star that's been with us, this thread that's been with us our whole life of who we are. That's the freedom of the North Star. And it can be as small as a mustard seed, but that's all you need. So know your North Star. And if you're having challenging or dark times, it's still there. It might be small, it might be not very felt. It might even, the North Star out there, cloud covering, different circumstances, you can't see it, but you know it's there, even if you can't feel it. Some part of you know it's still there. Acknowledge that. Don't just go, well, I can't see it, so it's not there. Acknowledge even when you can't see it. Isn't that what faith is? About not being able to see things, but you know that it's there because you know your North Star. You've experienced it since your whole life. And if it's a person that you might not have known your whole life, the moment you met them, you knew there was an eternal quality to that. And there's still there's still a North Star for you, even on the other side of the veil. What is your North Star? Nurture it. Give thanks for it. Acknowledge it, acknowledge it, acknowledge it, and let it do its work through you. Let it show you the way. Follow the North Star. You're not leading the North Star. You're following your inner North Star. What does it want to guide you to do? Let's say you are a writer like Elizabeth Gilbert. What is that writing part of me, that writing soul, that North Star? What does it want from me today? What does it want to write through me today? And it might need breaks. I just need a break from writing today. Maybe the writing says I need a break, but listen to it. Listen to your mathematical soul, your service soul, your soul that has to give service, because if you don't, you just can't breathe. What is it that I am to give service to today? What am I to give today? Just ask, because that's what brings you alive, is that beautiful North Star. And just continuing on that, I want to talk now about, shift a little bit to the East, Star of the East, which is part of the story of Christ, Jesus Christ's birth. And let me acknowledge, there's a lot of question about whether that ever happened. Could be, couldn't be. Or it's just mythology. It's based on other myths that have happened that have similar stories, and it's just a repetition of myth. All of that could be true. But we want to open to the magic. What's the magic of that story that our soul wants to hear? And what makes it more magical than scientific is that North Star, the Polaris Star, that's scientific. That's objective. It's repeatable. You can see it. But we also, in the darkness, enter into mystery. That which we can't really repeat because we didn't do anything to make something happen. So the Star of the East, I was listening to all these explanations, and the fact is they don't even know what it meant. Like, were they coming from the east, going to the west, goes back and forth, or were they already there? Someone was saying that the Star of East was right over the stable, and it wasn't until the Magi got closer that they saw it. So it didn't guide them, but they'd already gotten there, and then all this stuff. But the point is, it's a mystery. No scientific proof for it, that it ever existed. But we hear St. Porphyrios share his experience of feeling the presence of the divine and looking up and feeling this star compelling him, drawing him with all his loved ones. Not just loved ones, family, but his spiritual elders. All that was real for him in his life, and that one day he would be part of that star. When I read that, I almost broke down because I had that same experience, and I never heard it described before. And I'm pretty confident, I was in ministerial school at the time, and I'm pretty sure I was reading something, Sufis, Gnostic Gospels, I don't know what I was reading. We always read very interesting stuff. And I went outside, night sky, and there was a star, a light star. It was very much a star. I didn't think, oh, that's a light. I very much, like, that was a star. And it was drawing me, like all I wanted to do was go up there, and it was so much love. It was so intimate. It was like incredible, and it was magnetic. That was that magnetic. That's when he uses the word compelling. It was magnetic. And so after that, I'm like, but I didn't know what it was. It was total mystery. Went inside. I went out every night looking for, like, please, I want this experience again. And I never have had it ever again. Maybe I will again. I don't know. Maybe it is something. Oh, I'll be there someday. I don't know what it was. But what I do know is that it was more real than most experiences that I have, and it's a mystery. Why did I have it? What was it trying to tell me? What can I learn from it? I don't know the answers to those questions. But when we know our North Star, when we know what matters to us, when we have those mysterious experiences that can come through the twinkling of stars, that aren't repeatable, that science will never be able to explain. And so I think of the Star of the East over where Jesus was maybe or maybe not born, and that there's no scientific proof that's right. Because my bet is that experience I had with the star, nobody else saw. I don't think other people in the neighborhood saw it, because I don't think it was a human experience. I don't think it was an experience of fact. It was a transcendent experience. And when we're on this journey and we know our North Star, we start to, and we live from that place, we start to have these experiences that we cannot control, we cannot make happen, we just make ourselves open and available. And that's the innocence. The innocence of this time. I have always loved the symbology of an infant Christ. An infant, a presence of total innocence, has no agenda. When you look at a baby's not trying to control the universe. A baby's just love, just light. It's like a star on the ground instead of in the sky. And it's innocent. And there's something so beautiful about the purity and the innocence of that. And when we enter into the mystery, we can't enter it with innocence and purity if we are afraid. If we're trying to control things. Oh my gosh, I'm in the unknown. 2025, always this is true, but this year, total unknown. We know there's a lot of change. Whether you call it good or bad, is regardless, it's going to be very different. We don't know what that's going to look like. It probably is complex, good and bad, a lot of different things happening. Who knows? If we enter it without knowing our North Star, it's going to throw us all the time. Know your North Star, because it helps you enter into mystery, curious rather than afraid, engaged rather than hiding. You can participate to whatever you're called, whatever your star within you is calling you to participate in. When you know your North Star, you can enter into the mystery as a child. Thought a lot about this idea of being innocent in a time that feels very unsafe to be innocent, to be open and available. And I'm not just talking about external times, but that could happen within your family, work, life, friendships. There might be times where you just don't feel like it's safe to be pure and innocent, and yet everything in the mystical, spiritual teachings are to be pure and innocent. And the only way we are that is when we connect with this North Star that is beyond time and space. That higher God, that's the innermost God, it is beyond everything that's happening in this world. There is nothing in this world, there is nothing of the unknown that can happen that can shake that North Star in your heart. And when you know that you know that you know that, you can be safe and innocent in the midst of what we might find fearful. Treya Wilbur, who we heard about. First of all, I've never met her. I didn't even get a chance to saw, I just saw, just as I was coming, that there's a video with her. I've never heard her voice. I've only read her journal entries in this book, Grace and Grit. I sobbed when she died. She changed my life because she knew she was a star. Estrella, by the way, is the Spanish word for star. So she changed her name to Treya as a star, and she wore a star. Like, she had this experience of the star, and she claimed it, and she lived it. And even as she had transitioned to the other side at a very young age, had to face ill health and wasn't able to transcend it physically. But who she was, that light that she was, it transcends time and space. I was reading about it years after it happened, and my heart, my actions, the way I lived my life changed because she was the light. And no external, no physical, nothing that was happening to her changed one iota that light. And I've experienced her since then, giving me extraordinary guidance. I still have never met her. I'm like, can that be her? I don't even know. I don't know her, but I know her. Nothing, anything of this world, the three-dimensional time and space, can ever, ever, ever dim the light that you are. And one last little fact about the Polaris star, which I just learned this morning, but I think it's great. The Polaris star is not exceptionally brilliant. It's not a supernova. It's not this huge bright star. They said it's by far not even close to one of the brightest stars. It's not the most distant star. It's not the closest star. There's nothing remarkable about the Polaris star. It's just steady. You don't have to be a star like celebrity star, supernova. Everyone sees you and go, wow. And even the mustard seed, that's kind of magical and mysterious and cool too. You don't even have to be the smallest. I had a friend, she's like, I love being smaller than everybody. That was her thing. You don't have to be anything extra. Just be who you are and be steady. Be steady in your North Star. And that is the kingdom of heaven. That's where the richness and the treasures of life are lived. Let's pray. I was going to sing the last verse, the chorus of We Three Kings, but I can't remember it. I went blank. So let's just pray. I'm saving you all. That spirit, like, I'll save them. Okay. Just saying that singing is not my North Star. Oh, gosh. But when we know it, we know it. And we can laugh more and be silly more and be free more and be curious more and interested more because we are free. And that every one of us, made of stardust, made in the image and likeness of pure spirit, right here and right now, it is a living reality for every one of us. We already know. I know even as I've been talking, you've gotten clearer and clearer what your North Star is. You know that you know what it is. You've always known what it is. And if there's some articulation, you might just feel it. You might not have words for it, but you feel it. You feel it. You sense it. For some of you, you might have an immediate image of it. Some of you can articulate it. Some of it's no doubt. Some of it's like, I feel it, but it's a little vague. It doesn't matter. On some level, everyone in this room, everyone who can hear my voice knows. And you know that you know that you know what your North Star is. And all of it is the power and the presence of this one love, this one God, this one divine presence, this universal light, uniquely and originally showing up as each and every one of us, as this radiant star of light. Each and every one of us, this beautiful, pure, and innocent light that nothing of this three-dimensional world could ever hurt, harm, or endanger ever. Each and every one of us, this divine Christ, this divine Buddha, this divine Atman presence, this infinite, pure soul, we are that now. And so all week long, we delight in it. We celebrate. That's the light we are celebrating. A light that we can never add on to, a light that we can never take away from. It is already fully orbed as each and every one of us now. It is fully orbed as each and every one of us right here, right now. That is what we're celebrating. And so as we go forth into this beautiful month and continue to listen and learn from the mystery, from the darkness, and open our heart to see even more and more this beautiful, brilliant light that we are, and we see that light in the people that we love, and those people that are on the other side of the veil whose starlight is still with us, guiding us and protecting us and loving us. Never ends. It never ends. Absolutely free. Absolutely free. Absolutely free. And unlimited, pure love, joy, peace that passes all human understanding. I celebrate that now within all of us, every single one of us. To God be the glory. In deep abiding gratitude, I just say thank you. Thank you, God. We release this word into the law of love, knowing that as we have known and claimed and accepted this here and now, it is truly, truly already done. And so I invite you now to join me in saying, and so it is. Amen and amen.
I walk in God in all